Hi, I'm Nicole Kemper. I'm a writer, actor, and filmmaker living in Atlanta, Georgia. This is 50 Foot Woman, and I've committed to shooting at least one roll of motion picture film per month. So I recently did a video about shooting with color reversal stock, Ektachrome specifically, and I shot Ektachrome on a Super 8 camera that I have, as well as a Double 8 camera that I have. And so we looked at the raw footage and compared the results. And so the exposure on the Super 8 footage came out really nicely. It was an overcast day. The lighting was pretty even. And also, of course, the Bell & Howell 431, which is the Super 8 camera that I was using, it does the auto exposure for you, so you don't have to worry about thinking about, like, you know, what aperture you should be at and that sort of thing. The Double 8 camera that I was shooting with on a totally different day, that day it was very sunny. Perhaps too sunny for this film stock that I was shooting. Also, I think this was my second time. By now, I've used that camera quite a bit. I still make mistakes with it where I forget to set the exposure correctly, and that's just part of my learning process. So on that roll, I had some incredibly overexposed shots. I had some slightly underexposed shots, and I also had some shots that, because they were well exposed properly, but just, you know, due to the nature of the way that Ektachrome sometimes looks in shadier areas, it looks a little like cool in temperature, and I would like to warm it up the way that all the stuff in the much more even sunlight. So as the day went on, the sun went down a little bit, and the exposure got a little bit better. And so I have some nice, really warm shots from that roll. And so some of these ones that are correctly exposed, but maybe in cooler in temperature, I kind of want to adjust those so that they match. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take it into DaVinci and see what we can do with some of these, what I would call tricky shots. Ektachrome is notorious for being very finicky and not very flexible color negative film. If you overexpose it, most often you can kind of dial it back. Underexposing with the color negative or reversal can be a little trickier depending on how underexposed it is. Anytime you have, and this goes for extremely overexposed shots as well, anytime you have like so much of an exposure problem that there's a loss of detail, there's really not much you can do. But if you've overexposed and there's still detail on the shot, usually with color negative, it actually, overexposing a little bit actually looks pretty good. But I've been told with Ektachrome that it's a little bit harder to dial back on those things, or even to fix underexposure. You have to be a little bit more exact with your metering, and we're going to test that theory today. So let's just get right into it. So I've got a couple of sort of what I would say tricky shots here that I would like to pull into DaVinci, and let's just see what we can do with it. So there are some shots, for example, like this. We've got this pig here sort of hanging out in his pen. You can kind of see here how there's just like a complete lack of detail here. And I don't think that we're going to get anything out of that, so I'm not even going to try. But we do have some other shots here, like this one of the slide I'm particularly interested in. While we've got some really hot highlights over here in the corner, I feel like this one has some potential that while it's overexposed, there might be something we can do with this, because it still has a lot of detail here in the midtones. We've also got this shot in the tent, which is a little underexposed. So I just want to see what we can do with this one. This shot of the chickens, I feel like is pretty evenly exposed, but a little cool in temperature. So we'd like to adjust that a bit. So let's just kind of pop into DaVinci and see what we can do. Okay, so I pulled in, so let me get into my color space here. So I pulled in one of the shots from the Super 8 footage, one of the ones that's like much better exposed than that Double 8 stuff, just to kind of show you the difference in terms of how do we know or what does it look like when something is properly exposed versus not properly exposed. So you can see here, one of the ways that we can kind of tell what's going on with the image is by looking at the scopes. And I'm looking at my sort of my Y waveform scope here, and it's basically a visual representation of what's going on with the signal. And so this area here, we kind of ignore, because what that is, we're just kind of looking at the film sprockets here. And so this is kind of showing us where the sprockets are. So we can ignore that area, and we can ignore this area here again, which is the edge of the film, which is right here. So we're really just looking at this area in the center. And we know that this image is actually in pretty good shape here, because you're seeing a nice sort of healthy looking signal here, where the highlights are hitting towards the top end of the scope here, and the shadows. So the highlights would be sort of like this area in the sky, or maybe any sort of true white area. So the sky, maybe a little bit of reflection off the pants here. All of that would be up here in the highlights. Your shadows are anything that's true black. So of course the poncho is a real good example, or just any areas of shadow here. So over here in the shed, all of that would be down here on the bottom. And then the midtones is kind of everything else in between. And we can see our midtones are actually really nicely spread out here. So there's really not too much for us to do with this image. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll pull up the highlights just a tiny bit, just so we can get a little bit more contrast here. So maybe I'll pull up the highlights just a little bit and pull the shadows just down a little bit, but not too much, because we really don't want to, like, we don't want to lose detail here in the shirt. And maybe I'll just pull up the midtones just a tiny bit. But again, not too much. There's just not much I want to do to this image. And that's one of the cool things about this particular film stock, is that, so you can see I've done just a tiny bit. And what it did is it kind of gave us a little bit more contrast, a little bit more texture, and just actually even gave us a little bit more of a deeper color, or more vibrant color here. But there's not really much else I want to do. Certainly we could warm it up if we want to, since it was kind of an overcast day, but I don't really want to. I'm pretty happy with this the way that it is. And that's, I think, one of the cool things about color reversal stock, like this Ektachrome, is that out of the box, it kind of has this really nice vibrant look. And if that's what you're going for, if it's properly exposed, you really just don't have to do too much to it in post. All right, now let's take a look at an image that has quite a bit more problems going on with it. And you can really see the difference between if you're looking at the scopes, this image and this one. And one of the big differences is that all of the highlights are really kind of squashed up here towards the top. And you're really not seeing, even though we know that there are parts of the image here that should be in shadow, or having some kind of shadow detail, we're really not seeing anything down here in the shadows, and all of our midtones are kind of squished up towards the top. So that is really telling me that I've got an overexposed image. So what can we do with this? Let's give it a go and see if there's something that we can do to salvage this image, because I really like what's going on here in terms of the action we're getting and the composition, but the exposure is just all wrong. So my inclination is to pull down the shadows first, but I've noticed with film that can get a little squirrely. So I think I might start with the midtones. Let's just see what happens. Can we pull down some of these midtones? And that is giving us a bit more. Okay, so we're pulling down the midtones. Maybe now we try pulling down some shadows. Of course, we don't want to go too far. We don't want to lose the highlights, but I don't know that there's much we can do to actually lose the highlights here, because they're just so intense. We could certainly try vignetting this off and see if we could pull it down, but I don't really know. You can already see, though, with just by stretching those midtones out a bit, we are getting something. So let's just kind of do a temperature check here and see how things are going. So we definitely did a lot. It's not totally fixed but we definitely got something out of there. And you can see that I am pulling maybe a little bit too much down here in the shadows on the pant leg. So again, this even might be a case where we would really need to vignette off, like say this grass here. Maybe if we try isolating the hue of that grass and see if we can adjust the exposure just of that. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. So you can see I've got this little eyedropper here. So if I click on that, so you can see that I've kind of isolated just those areas. Can I get a little bit more detail here? Okay, that is helping, but you can see it's also kind of messing up the highlights in the sky. So I think vignette maybe is the wrong term for this. I would say we're really more drawing a matte. Okay, I think we definitely did something to this that really helped, but we didn't really mess with the lady here too much. So we were able to do quite a bit with it. It's still pretty overexposed, so I'm feeling like we're getting somewhere. So you can see that the camera moves and the matte doesn't move with it, so we would definitely need to do some keyframing here to keep that matte there and maybe do a little bit of tracking or something. I think we could continue to play around with this. The shot has got a lot going on in it, but you can see that we were able to make some adjustments to it to improve upon some of the problems. All right, so let's move on to this shot here, which is a little underexposed, right? So we got a little bit of underexposure here. I think that there's probably, I think this one is pretty doable. You can see the opposite is true with this one as with the last shot, where everything's kind of hitting here near the bottom and you're not really getting any highlights at all. As far as what the highlights would be in this shot, I would say probably the white of these paper plates or whatever would want to hit a little bit more towards the highlights. Certainly you can see there's a little bit of a highlight here and it's creeping up towards the top. But mostly we really just want to get those midtones up a little bit more because everything's kind of being a little crushed right now. But I definitely think with this shot, the other shot was pretty extreme in terms of the problems it was facing, but this one I think is definitely, I think this one's definitely doable. So let's, again, I'm going to start, typically with digital, I start with the highlights and the shadows first, but I've noticed with film, these Super 8 film things that I've been doing, working with the midtones a bit first, seems to be a better way to go. So let's pull up the midtones a bit. And I think once we do this, you can already see without me doing anything to the color that we're already getting a bit more color even than we were before, right? As we pull up some of the exposure, you're also seeing a lot more grain. The more we mess with the image, the more grain we're gonna see. And so we're seeing a little bit more of the grain. I think maybe we want to pull up some of the highlights a bit. But yeah, you can see that as we're pulling this up, it is definitely getting a lot grainier. I definitely can feel just a slight less flexibility here than, like, I feel like this in a color negative would not, I feel like I could pull this up without seeing quite so much grain, especially given that this is a 100 stock. But we are able to do a little bit with it. We are able to pull it up a bit. So let's see if we want to warm this up a bit. Let's push a little bit of warmth in the highlights. Okay. That's feeling nice. Yeah, I think we're getting a lot more out of this than we did before, and feeling pretty good about that. All right, so now we've got this shot here with the chickens, which is pretty well exposed. You can see that the midtones are stretching out and looking pretty good here. But it's definitely a little cooler than I would like. So let's just warm this up a bit. Shouldn't be too hard. And again, I'm going to start maybe in the highlights. Okay, maybe push a little bit. The midtones. Yeah, I think that definitely Made a difference. Okay, so I've got a lot more to go with these with the Super 8 and Double 8 footage, but I feel like those were some really problematic shots that I just wanted to, give it a go and see what we could do with it. And I feel like what we've learned here is that it is possible to adjust, to make adjustments to color reversal stock in DaVinci. DaVinci is a really powerful tool. And so there's, quite a bit that we can do with it. But it does have its limits. And so while, so some of these so this very, very overexposed shot that we have here, I think we could bring it down to a manageable level. It would require a lot of work, probably a lot of matting off certain parts of the frame so that we can adjust some of these problems separately. Obviously, we matted off this grass here. We'd have to add some tracking information or keyframing or something to keep that mat in place. But this shot here, which was underexposed, but not so much so that it wasn't quite as an extreme a problem. So we were able to pull that up a little bit more easily. And I think that if you had a shot that was slightly overexposed, you could certainly correct for that. I definitely felt a little bit less flexibility here than I would with color reversal stock or color negative stock. So I can say that is certainly a factor, but it's certainly not impossible to make some adjustments here as needed. And what I think I was really interested to see was just how, with this shot that's actually exposed properly, how little needs to be done, because it's already kind of got that look. So if you're shooting with a stock that has the look that you want already, if you can really nail that exposure, that's going to be a lot less work for you on the back end. Who knew? Woo! Thanks for watching. If you liked this video or if you are interested in working with motion picture film, I hope that you'll stick around by subscribing to the channel. The name of this channel is Critical Crop Top Films, which is my production company, and all of the videos for the 50-Foot Woman series are in the 50-Foot Woman playlist. If you'd like a little bit more, I also have a blog on Substack where I share the 50-Foot Woman videos, and also I share a little bit more about my still photography. So photo walks, different film stocks, different still cameras that I'm experimenting with. At some point, I hope to get a little bit into developing my own film. So if you're interested in that, the link to the Substack is in the description of this video. So that's it for this week. I hope that you're going to be getting out there into the sunshine with your camera, grabbing your favorite film stock, whether that is a color negative film stock or a color reversal film stock, and let's shoot more film, you guys.